The broken girl. The market was alive with noise, filled with the sound of bargaining voices, clinking coins, and the hum of alien machines. Stalls glowed under bright neon lights, each one selling strange foods, metals, or tiny creatures in cages. Among this noise and color, people pushed past one another, rushing to buy or sell. But in the middle of this chaos, there was a spot no one wanted to look at. There, against the wall of a broken stall, lay a young alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her long dark hair dirty with dust, and her once bright eyes dim with weakness. She had no arms, no legs, only bandaged stumps that showed where her limbs had been. Every passerby turned their face away. To them, she was not a person anymore, only a burden. Children pointed at her and laughed. Traders muttered cruel jokes as they walked by. Some threw rotten food near her, not to feed her, but to mock her hunger. The girl did not cry. She had cried all her tears long ago. Now she only stared at the ground, waiting for the day her breath would finally stop. Among the crowd was a man, human, not alien. His clothes were old, covered in oil and grease, and his hands carried the scars of hard work. He was a mechanic, known for fixing broken ships, droids, and machines that others had given up on. He had no wealth, no family, and no high status. But when his eyes fell on the broken girl, he stopped walking. For a long moment, he simply stood there, frozen. Something about her face pulled at his chest. She was young, perhaps no more than 16. She had the same look he had once seen in a machine thrown into scrap, a look of something valuable, discarded before its time. "Move along, human," a market guard barked, noticing him staring. "She's not for you. She's nothing." The mechanic did not move. Instead, he knelt down slowly, ignoring the strange looks of others. He reached out, not touching her yet, but letting his shadow fall across her face. The girl flinched, expecting another insult or a cruel hand. "Are you alive?" he asked quietly. Her lips trembled. She wanted to answer, but her throat was dry, her voice barely a whisper.
"Why do you care?"
The mechanic blinked. No one else had even spoken to her like that. For a moment, the noise of the market seemed far away. "Because I do," he said simply. Laughter burst out from a nearby trader who overheard him. "Don't waste your breath, human. That one is broken beyond repair. Not even the gods can help her." More voices joined in, mocking both the girl and the mechanic. "Buy her if you want. She won't fetch a coin. Even slaves must have some use. She has none." The human ignored them all. He looked at the girl again. Her eyes, though tired and weak, still carried a faint light, like a dying flame struggling against the wind. And for reasons he could not explain, he felt that flame must not go out. The girl tried to look away, ashamed of herself. "Go," she whispered. "They are right. I am broken. No one can fix me." The mechanic smiled faintly, though there was sadness in his eyes. "I fix broken things," he said softly. "That is what I do." Her breath caught in her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. The guard stepped forward angrily. "Human, stop wasting time. She is useless. Leave her be." But the mechanic reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small bag, the sound of coins inside. It was all he had, the savings of many months of hard work. His hand shook as he held it out. The crowd gasped. "You're not serious," one shouted. "You'd give your credits for her?" The guard sneered. "You would waste your money on trash?" The mechanic's eyes hardened. "She's not trash. She's alive." The guard snatched the coins, laughing. "Fine, she's yours. Take your broken toy and go." The crowd burst into cruel laughter. Some called him a fool. Others shook their heads, saying he would regret it. But the mechanic ignored them all. He gently lifted the girl into his arms. She was so light, like carrying nothing but bones wrapped in cloth. The girl was stunned, silent. She had expected to die in that market, abandoned and mocked. But now, for the first time in so long, she felt arms around her, not pushing her away, but holding her close. As the mechanic carried her through the market, people stared, whispering behind their hands. But he walked on, not looking back. The girl finally found her voice. Her words were broken, weak. Why would you save me?" The mechanic looked down at her. His face was tired, but his eyes were steady. "Because someone had to," he said. Her tears returned, but this time they were different. They were not of despair, but of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. And in that crowded alien marketplace, a silent promise was made. A human mechanic, poor and unknown, had taken a step that would change not only her life, but perhaps the fate of many others, because sometimes saving one broken soul is the start of a story far greater than anyone can imagine. The small workshop smelled of oil and smoke, a place where machines lived again after others had given up on them. Metal parts were scattered across the tables, wires hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered with tools that only a skilled hand could understand. The mechanic pushed the door open with his shoulder, still holding the alien girl in his arms. He laid her carefully on a padded bench near the corner. For a moment he stood there, catching his breath, staring at her fragile form. She looked out of place in his messy workshop, like a delicate flower dropped in a junkyard. The girl's eyes darted around. The sound of clinking metal made her nervous. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked weakly. The human wiped his hands on a rag, thinking carefully. He had asked himself the same question all the way back. Why had he done it? He had barely enough credits to feed himself, and yet he had spent it all to buy her freedom. His life was hard already, fixing broken ships for little pay, living day by day. And now he had taken in someone the whole world had thrown away. Because no one else would, he finally said. His voice was steady but quiet. "And I couldn't just walk past?" The girl turned her face away. "You wasted your money," she whispered. "You'll regret it." The mechanic knelt beside her, looking straight into her dim, glowing eyes. "Maybe, but I make choices I can live with. Leaving you there, that was not one of them." Her lips trembled. No one had ever spoken to her as if she mattered. For a moment, silence filled the workshop, broken only by the faint hum of a half-functioning generator. Then the girl asked, almost afraid of the answer, "What will you do with me now?" The mechanic rubbed the back of his neck. He hadn't thought that far ahead. To him, saving her had been the first step, but what came next? His eyes drifted to the shelves around the room. Arms of droids, legs of broken exosuits, metal fingers designed for machines, not people. And yet, he was a mechanic. He fixed what others threw away. Wasn't she, in a way, the same? "I'll try to help you," he said slowly. Her eyes widened. "Help me? How?" He pointed to the pile of machine parts. "I build things." "I can build for you too." The girl's heart pounded in her chest. "You mean new arms? New legs?" He didn't smile, but there was determination in his eyes. "I don't know if it will work. I don't have the best tools, but I will try." The girl shook her head in disbelief. "No one does that. No one would spend so much time. For me." The mechanic leaned closer. "Listen, I've spent my whole life fixing broken engines, broken drones, broken ships. But when I saw you, I realized maybe I was meant to fix something greater." Her throat tightened and her eyes filled with tears. Hope was dangerous. It hurt when it failed. But his words lit a tiny spark inside her, one she thought was long gone. Before either of them could say more, there was a loud knock at the door. The mechanic froze. Slowly he walked to the door and opened it. Outside stood two men, tall aliens with rough faces. They wore the symbol of the local market lords, the ones who ruled over trade, slaves, and punishment. "You," one of them growled. "We heard you bought the broken girl." The mechanic kept his face calm, though his heart raced. "Yes, she's mine now," the alien smirked. "Yours? She belongs to the market. Broken slaves are not allowed to live outside. You're breaking the law." The mechanic's hands clenched into fists. "I paid for her. She's free." The men laughed, a cruel sound. "Free? Nothing in the city is free, human. You will regret this choice." The mechanic stood his ground. His voice was low but steady. "Maybe I will. But she is not going back." The aliens leaned close, their eyes flashing with threat. "Then you've made an enemy of the lords. Remember that." They turned and walked away, but their laughter echoed in the narrow street. The mechanic closed the door, his jaw tight. He knew what it meant. Trouble was coming. But when he turned back, he saw the girl watching him with wide, fearful eyes. "They'll hurt you. Because of me," she whispered. He walked back to her, kneeling again. "Maybe, but I chose this. I chose you." Her tears fell silently, but her lips formed a faint smile. For the first time since her accident, she did not feel like a burden. She felt like someone worth fighting for. That night, while the city outside prepared for another day of trade and cruelty, the human mechanic stayed awake, sketching designs on scrap metal with a trembling hand. They were rough, imperfect drawings of arms and legs, but they were filled with determination. The girl watched him until her eyes grew heavy. She realized something strange. For the first time in years, she wanted to see tomorrow. And as the mechanic worked under the dim glow of a flickering lamp, he knew one thing for certain. This choice would change everything. Not just for her, but for him, and maybe for the city itself. Because sometimes the smallest choice can start the biggest fire. The mechanic's workshop was no palace. The walls were patched with rusted plates, the roof leaked when it rained, and the floor was stained with oil from years of work. But to the alien girl lying on the bench, it felt like another world. No one shouted at her here. No one mocked her. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint buzz of a power tool and the crackle of the old generator. The human moved carefully, setting his tools on the table one by one. His hands were steady, though his eyes were tired. He had been awake all night, drawing designs, checking parts, and imagining how to shape broken metal into new life. The girl watched him quietly. Her glowing eyes followed every movement. Finally, she spoke in a soft, uncertain voice. "Why are you doing this? You could have left me. No one would blame you." The mechanic paused, turning a wrench in his hand. He thought about her words. Why was he doing this? He had asked himself the same question again and again. He set the wrench down and looked at her. "Because I can't stand broken things," he said. "If I see something broken, I have to fix it. That's who I am." She blinked. "But I'm not a machine." A small smile touched his lips. "No, you're not. You're more important." Her chest tightened. She had been called many things in her life. Slave, useless, burden, but never important. The mechanic turned back to his work. He opened a drawer and pulled out old robotic arms. They were scratched and dented, parts from a mining droid he had repaired years ago. They were far too big for her body, but he stared at them as if they held the answer. The girl tilted her head. "Are those for me?" He nodded. "Not yet, but I can break them down, reshape the joints, make them fit." Her breath caught. The idea felt impossible, like a dream too far away. But watching him, she felt a strange warmth in her chest. Hours passed. Sparks flew as the human cut through metal with his torch. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he welded parts together. His hands moved with practiced skill, but there was something different this time. Something more careful, more gentle. It was not just about building a machine. It was about giving her something no one else would. The girl dozed off, but every time she woke, he was still there, working, eyes narrowed with focus. She could not understand why he cared so much. When night fell, the mechanic finally sat down, exhausted. He looked at the bench where she lay. Her eyes were half closed, but she was awake. "You should sleep," he told her. She shook her head faintly. I'm afraid this is only a dream." "If I sleep, it will vanish." His heart ached at her words. He leaned forward. "It's not a dream. I promise." The girl's lips curved into the faintest smile before she drifted into sleep. The next morning, the mechanic stepped outside to gather more scrap. The streets were quieter, but whispers followed him. "That's the human who bought the broken girl," people muttered. Some laughed, some spat, and some shook their heads in pity, but the mechanic didn't care. He carried back what he could find: broken wires, worn-out servos, discarded metal plates. Every piece, no matter how useless to others, was valuable to him. Inside, the girl stirred. She turned her head to see the pile of junk he had brought in. "You're really going to build for me?" she asked in disbelief. He placed the pieces on the table. "Yes, it won't be perfect, but it will be yours." Her eyes glistened with tears. She whispered, "No one has ever built anything for me. Not even food, not even clothes, nothing." The human paused, his hands still. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he said softly, "Then this will be the first." That night, as he worked, the girl gathered her courage to ask something. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. "What if I can't walk again? What if I fail?" The mechanic looked at her, his eyes serious. "Then we try again. And again. Until it works. I don't give up on broken things." The words sank into her heart like fire. For the first time since her accident, she felt that maybe she wasn't hopeless. Suddenly, a sound echoed outside. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The mechanic froze. He grabbed a wrench and stepped toward the door. Through the crack, he saw shadows moving. The girl's voice trembled. "Is it them?" He didn't answer. He tightened his grip on the wrench. The men from the market had returned. The mechanic's pulse quickened. He knew they would not allow him to change her fate. To them, she was a reminder of power, broken, helpless, controlled. If she stood again, it would be a challenge to their rule. The knocking came. Louder this time, the girl whispered. "They'll take me away." The mechanic turned back to her, his jaw tight, eyes burning with determination. "No," he said firmly. "They won't. Not while I live." Her breath caught in her throat. In that moment, she realized something. The human wasn't just trying to fix her body. He was fighting for her life, her freedom, her right to exist. And as the heavy fists pounded on the door, the workshop no longer felt like a small, broken place. It felt like the heart of a storm. The pounding at the door stopped, leaving only silence. The mechanic stood with the wrench still in his hand, waiting for the next blow. But it never came. The men outside had left for now. He lowered the wrench slowly, his heart still beating fast. The alien girl had been watching him the whole time, fear in her glowing eyes. "They'll be back," she whispered. "I know," he said, placing the wrench on the table. "That's why we can't waste time." From that moment, he worked harder than ever. The workshop filled with the smell of burning metal and the sound of grinding tools. Sparks danced in the dim light as he cut and shaped old droid parts. His hands moved quickly but carefully, every piece chosen with purpose. The girl lay on the bench, silent but watching. She wanted to ask him to stop, to save himself from danger, but the determination in his eyes held her voice down. One night, after many sleepless hours, the mechanic lifted something from the table, a newly forged mechanical arm. It was not smooth or elegant. The metal was scarred, the joints bulky, and the wires thin. But to him it was beautiful, and to her it was hope. He carried it to her bench and set it down gently. "It's ready," he said. The girl stared at the arm, her breath caught in her chest. "For me?" he nodded. "It's not perfect. It may take time to work, but it's yours." Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to reach out and touch it, but she had no arms. The irony cut her deeply. Still, the thought of moving again, of holding something again, filled her with a light she had forgotten. The mechanic prepared his tools. "It may hurt," he warned. "Are you ready?" Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "Yes." With careful hands, he connected the mechanical arm to the stump of her shoulder. The sparks of his torch glowed as he welded the connector. She bit down on a piece of cloth he had given her, muffling her cries as pain shot through her body. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she did not stop him. Minutes felt like hours. Then at last he stepped back, wiping his brow. The arm was attached. "Try," he said softly. The girl looked at the strange metal limb that now extended from her shoulder. It felt heavy, unnatural. For a moment she feared it would never move. She closed her eyes, focusing all her will on it. Then, fingers twitched. Just barely, but enough. Her eyes flew open. Her hand had moved. The mechanic smiled faintly. "Good," again, she tried once more. The fingers clenched tighter this time, curling into a fist. A sound escaped her throat. Not a sob of pain, but a cry of wonder. Tears streamed down her face. She lifted the arm slowly, shakily, but it lifted. The wires hummed, the joints creaked, but the limb obeyed. I can move," she whispered in disbelief. The mechanic nodded, his eyes warm. "Yes, you can." She stared at the arm, flexing the fingers, touching her face with the cold metal. The sensation was strange, but the fact that she could feel anything at all through the sensors he had built made her sob with joy. For the first time since her accident, she could reach out. The mechanic knelt beside her, speaking gently. "It's only the first step. Soon we'll build the others." Her heart pounded in her chest. "Why?" she asked again. "Why do you care so much?" You're not just anything," he cut in. His voice was sharp, filled with conviction. "You're alive. And that is enough." The girl's tears fell harder. She whispered, "No one has ever said that to me." The mechanic lowered his head. He had no answer to that. Only silence. But outside, the silence did not last. The next day, word spread quickly. Rumors whispered through the streets. The human gave her an arm. She can move again. Some were curious, some were angry, and some were afraid. By nightfall, shadows moved near the workshop again. Voices hissed in the dark. "She is not supposed to walk again," one voice said. "She belongs to the market." "Then we'll take her back," another growled. The girl heard them and trembled. She looked at the mechanic, fear shining in her eyes. "They'll come for me." The mechanic tightened his jaw. Let them try. He placed a hand on the table near the arm he had built. We're not stopping now. The girl looked at her new limb and clenched the fist tighter. For the first time in her life, she felt she had power. Fragile, unsteady, but real. That night, as the mechanic began shaping the designs for her legs, the girl whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, I am not broken anymore. And though the city outside plotted against them, inside that small workshop a quiet fire had begun to burn. The city never kept secrets for long. By the second sunrise after the girl lifted her new arm, the story had already reached the ears of the market lords. In a world where broken slaves were meant to remain broken, news of her recovery was dangerous, like a spark near dry wood. The mechanic was outside, scavenging for parts when he first noticed the change. People no longer just whispered about him, they stared. Some with pity, some with anger, and some with something far darker, fear. When he returned to the workshop, the girl was waiting anxiously. She clutched her mechanical arm as if it might be torn away at any moment. They know, she said quietly. I can feel it. The lords won't let this continue. The mechanic set down the metal scraps he had collected. His jaw tightened. Then we keep working. The faster you can stand, the harder it will be for them to take you. She wanted to believe him, but the tremor in her chest betrayed her fear. She had been powerless for so long. Even with her new arm, the shadow of the lords loomed too large. That evening, while the mechanic shaped parts for her legs, the sound of boots echoed outside. The girl froze. The mechanic looked toward the door, already knowing what awaited him. The heavy knock came, shaking the door. Open up, human, a voice barked. The mechanic stepped forward and pulled the door open. 3 guards stood there, tall and armed, their faces twisted with arrogance. Behind them, a man in rich black robes leaned casually on a cane. His eyes glowed faintly red, a sign of the market overseers. You're the one causing trouble, the overseer said smoothly, though there was poison in his tone. Word spreads that you've given life to a useless thing. The mechanic's hands curled into fists, but he kept his voice calm. She's not useless, the overseer chuckled darkly. To you, perhaps. But to us, she was an example. Broken slaves remind others what happens when they fail. If she walks again, it makes us look weak. She's not your property, the mechanic snapped. The overseer's smile widened. Everything in this city is our property, human. Including you, if we decide so. One of the guards shoved the mechanic back, but he held his ground. The girl watched from the bench, her heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to tell them to leave him alone, but fear froze her voice. The overseer leaned closer. Listen carefully, mechanic. You will stop this nonsense. No more arms, no legs. No repairs. Let the girl rot as she was meant to. Do this and perhaps we'll forget your little mistake. The mechanic's chest burned with rage. He looked over his shoulder at the girl, who was trembling. Then he turned back, his eyes blazing. No, he said firmly. I won't stop. The overseer's smile vanished. His cane tapped once on the ground. Then you've chosen death. With a wave of his hand, the guards shoved the mechanic aside and stepped toward the girl. Panic surged through her body. She raised her new arm instinctively, the metal fingers clenching. Stay away from her, the mechanic roared, grabbing a wrench from the table. The guards laughed. You think you can fight us with tools? The human swung the wrench with all his strength. It crashed into the first guard's helmet, knocking him off balance. The other guard lunged forward, but the girl with trembling effort swung her new arm. The heavy metal fist struck the guard's chest, making him stumble back in shock. For a moment, silence filled the workshop. The overseer's eyes narrowed. This is dangerous, he hissed. You're teaching her to fight. The mechanic stood in front of the girl, his wrench raised. I'm teaching her to live. The overseer's expression hardened. Then both of you are doomed. He motioned to the guards. Enough, leave them for now. But burn his name into the list. When the lords are ready, we will crush them. The guards hesitated but followed his command. They stepped back, glaring at the mechanic as if memorizing his face. Then they left, their boots echoing in the street. The mechanic slammed the door shut and dropped the wrench, his chest heaving. The girl looked at him with wide, tearful eyes. They'll kill you, she whispered. He sat beside her, breathing hard. Maybe. But if I stop, then they've already won. She shook her head, gripping his sleeve with her metal hand. Why do you risk so much for me? He looked at her, his face tired but determined. Because you're not broken anymore, and I won't let them break you again. Her tears fell freely. For the first time, she realized something. He wasn't just building her limbs. He was building her courage. That night, while the city outside whispered of punishment, the mechanic worked on the frame of her first leg. The girl watched, her new arm resting on her lap, her heart burning with both fear and hope. Every spark from his torch lit the dark workshop like tiny stars, and though danger loomed closer with every passing hour, neither of them stopped. Because now, it wasn't just about repairing her body, it was about defying a world that wanted her to stay broken. The workshop had grown quieter in the days that followed the overseer's visit, but the silence was heavy with tension. Outside whispers spread faster than smoke. Some spoke of a miracle, an alien girl given an arm by human hands. Others warned of punishment, saying the lords would soon crush both her and the mechanic. But inside, the mechanic worked without rest. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands raw, but his resolve was sharper than ever. He had built her one arm. Now he would give her legs. On the bench, the girl watched him closely. Her new arm was clumsy, but every day she practiced flexing the fingers, gripping objects, and holding small tools he handed her. She felt alive again, though fear still gnawed at her. One evening, the mechanic placed 2 metal frames on the table. They were crude, heavy, and patched together from scavenged parts, but to her they looked like something holy. Are those? Her voice broke before she could finish. He nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. They're yours. Not perfect, not pretty. They will hold you. Her breath caught in her chest. For years she had only dreamed of standing, of walking like she once had. And now the chance was in front of her. The mechanic brought the frames to her bench. This will hurt, he warned. More than the arm. But when it's done, you'll stand again. She swallowed hard, then nodded. Do it. The process was brutal. Sparks lit the workshop as he fused metal to flesh. She clenched her teeth, her new hand gripping the bench so tightly it left dents. Every nerve screamed, every muscle trembled, but she refused to beg him to stop. Finally, when the last wire was connected, the mechanic stepped back, his chest rising and falling. It's ready, he said. Try. The girl looked down at the strange metal legs attached to her body. They felt heavy like chains. She feared she would fall the moment she tried. The mechanic knelt beside her. His voice was calm, steady. 1 step. That's all. Just one, her heart pounded. Slowly she moved her new legs, swinging them to the edge of the bench. She gripped his shoulder for balance as she slid down, her feet touching the floor. For a moment she froze, her breath sharp, then she pushed. Her legs wobbled, metal joints creaking, but they held. She was standing. A cry tore from her throat, half sob, half laugh. Tears blurred her vision as she looked down at her own body, upright for the first time since the accident. I'm standing, she whispered. The mechanic smiled faintly. Yes, you are. She stumbled forward, nearly falling, but he caught her. She leaned on him, trembling. I can't do it, she gasped. Yes, you can, he said firmly. 1 step at a time. Trust me. With his support, she moved her leg. 1 step. The sound of the metal foot striking the floor echoed like thunder in her heart. She moved the other leg. Another step. Her tears flowed freely, but her lips curved into a radiant smile. She walked, clumsy, shaky, but real. The mechanic let go slowly, letting her balance on her own. She swayed, almost fell, then steadied herself. Her laughter filled the workshop, soft but full of joy. I'm walking, she cried, her voice carried beyond the walls. Outside, neighbors passing in the street froze, their eyes widening. They had heard the rumors, but now they saw it. Through the cracked window of the workshop, the broken girl stood on her own legs. Whispers spread like fire. It's true. She walks. By nightfall, the story reached the overseer. His fury shook the halls of the lords. A cripple made whole, he snarled. This human shames us with his defiance. If she can walk, others will demand freedom. If one broken slave can rise, all may rise, he slammed his cane to the floor. Bring more guards. End this before it spreads. Back in the workshop, the girl collapsed into the mechanic's arms, exhausted but glowing with joy. You did it, she whispered. You gave me back my life. He shook his head gently. No, you gave yourself back your life. I only helped. She rested her head against his shoulder. Then I will never leave your side, not now. Not ever. The mechanic said nothing, but his grip around her tightened. He knew danger was closer than ever. The overseer would not forgive this act of rebellion, but as he looked at her, standing, smiling, alive, he also knew he would never regret his choice. The girl closed her eyes, whispering softly, "I am not broken anymore." And though shadows gathered outside their door, within that workshop a miracle had already taken place. Because when one broken soul learns to walk again, the world itself begins to tremble. The morning was unnaturally still. The mechanic sat in his workshop staring at the tools scattered across the table. His hands were steady, but his mind was heavy with thoughts. He knew today would come. The lords would not stay silent after seeing their power challenged. The girl, now standing on her new legs, tested her balance in the corner. She moved slowly but proudly, her steps awkward yet filled with strength. Every time her foot struck the floor, her heart sang with victory. "You should rest," the mechanic told her quietly. She shook her head, her long dark hair brushing against her face. "No, if they come, I will not be lying down. I will face them standing." Before he could reply, a sound rolled through the street. Boots. Dozens of them. The mechanic's jaw tightened. He walked to the door and looked outside. The overseer had returned, but this time he was not alone. Rows of armored guards filled the street, their weapons shining. Behind them, citizens gathered, curious, whispering, waiting. The overseer raised his cane and pointed at the workshop. "Bring them out." The guards marched forward, pounding on the door until it shook. The mechanic opened it himself, stepping into the sunlight. Grease stained his clothes, his face was tired, but his eyes burned with defiance. "She's not yours," he said firmly. The overseer sneered. "Everything broken belongs to us. You dare to give her life? You dare to mock our rule?" Behind the mechanic, the girl stepped out. The crowd gasped. She stood tall on her new legs, her mechanical arm gleaming. Though her movements were shaky, her posture was proud. "I am not broken anymore," she said, her voice trembling but strong enough to carry. The overseer's face darkened. "You are a tool. Nothing more." "No," she said louder, her eyes glowing with fierce light. "I am alive, I am free, and I will never crawl again." The crowd stirred, whispers rising. She walks. She stands. For years they had only seen slaves broken, never restored. Hope, a forbidden thing, flickered among them. The overseer raised his cane. "Kill the human. Take the girl." The guards moved forward, but the mechanic stepped in front of her, gripping his wrench like a blade. "You'll have to go through me first." The first guard lunged, but the girl swung her mechanical arm. The heavy fist struck his chest, knocking him to the ground. Gasps filled the air. The mechanic swung his wrench, striking another guard's helmet. The street erupted in chaos, but something strange happened. The people watching did not run. They stayed. They watched as one human and one broken girl stood against the might of the lords. For the first time, they saw resistance. The overseer shouted in fury, "Fools, you cannot win." The girl raised her head, her voice shaking but loud. "Maybe not. But if I can stand, then others can too. If I can fight, then all of you can fight." The crowd fell silent, her words sinking deep. One of the citizens stepped forward. Then another. Soon more voices joined, murmuring, "She is right. Why must we stay broken?" The guards hesitated. Their power relied on fear, but fear was cracking. The overseer's red eyes burned. "Silence them!" he roared. But before the guards could move, the people surged. They didn't attack with weapons, only with courage. They stood in front of the workshop, forming a wall between the overseer and the mechanic and the girl. The overseer's face twisted with rage. He slammed his cane to the ground. "This is not over. We will return, and when we do, you will all pay." He turned sharply, leading the guards away. Their boots thundered down the street, leaving behind the sound of rising voices. The mechanic lowered his wrench, breathing hard. The girl leaned on him, exhausted but smiling through her tears. "We did it," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "No, you did it. You stood, and they could not stop you." The crowd surrounded them, eyes wide with awe. For years they had seen only cruelty, but now they saw something new, hope born from defiance. An old man stepped forward, bowing slightly to the mechanic. "You gave her life," he said, "but you also gave us courage." The mechanic looked at the girl. She stood proudly beside him, her arm gleaming, her legs steady. She was no longer the broken figure abandoned in the marketplace. She was a symbol. That night, as the city whispered with new fire, the mechanic sat in his workshop, staring at the girl who now trained to use her limbs with strength. He realized something. He had only wanted to fix what was broken. But in doing so, he had changed more than her fate. He had left a mark, a legacy. because sometimes a single act of kindness becomes more than salvation. It becomes rebellion, and in the galaxy beyond where whispers traveled faster than light, the story of the broken girl who walked again and the human who gave her hope would soon spread far and wide.